Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Well, here's a video I never thought I would be making. I watched The River Wild today, the semi-remake to the original with Kevin Bacon, only this one's got Adam Brody in it. Now, it's one of those films, and I'm sure you guys have done it before, where you're doing something and you think, I'm going to put a movie on in the background. I'll probably not pay attention to it, but I'll just have it on just in case I kind of watch it while I'm doing what I'm doing. So I was doing the ironing today, as you do, and I stuck The River Wild on, and within the first couple of minutes, I found myself like looking over to it, like, wait a minute, this seems pretty decent. So I had to pay attention to this film. And I'm glad I did, because this is probably the most surprising film of the year. Now, when I see the scores on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, etc., it's not got the best of scores. And I genuinely don't know why, because when I watched this film, and I'll go through it as best as I can, when I watched this film, the characters in the movie just felt so original. You know, in modern films where you've got these guys in the movie that are just completely useless and the girls are taking over because the girls are better than them. And I'm not saying every film's like this, but a lot of films today are like this, where the girls are already badasses, they know how to defeat the bad guy, and they just step on everyone's toes and they do what they need to do. That's genuinely the trend, but in The River Wild completely blew me away because it's not like that. The River Wild goes back to the 90s, it goes back to the noughties, where you've got these people in this movie, they've all got a backstory. You've got a woman from Ireland, you've got a woman from England, and then the rest of them are Americans, but you know everything about them within the first 20 minutes because the movie focuses on every character. It gives us a really good character development. Adam Brody's character was in prison. We don't know why he was in prison, but it builds up to the reason behind that, which is fantastic. You've even got the chilled out guy who is the boat ride instructor. He's got a sister who is a doctor. You know everything about these characters within the first 20 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'm invested in all these characters. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm invested in them. Now, I've not seen the original for quite some time. I've not seen it for about 30 years, so I can't even, 20 years, sorry. So I can't even remember how close it is to the original, if it's just by name only and location. But the premise of this movie is Adam Brody, his friend Taran Killen, Leighton Meester is Taran Killen's sister, and they go on this boat trip with two girls who are paying to see the sights, and they go down this trip. Now, in the film, again, we don't know how sus Adam Brody's supposed to be because he's just out of prison, but he goes into the woods with another girl. They're going to do the toilet at the same time, and he shouts for help. This girl's bleeding, the back of her head's bleeding, and we automatically assume that he's done something to her. And when he goes to get help with somebody else, she says, don't let him come back. He done this to me. So we're thinking, well, why has he done this? What are you doing? Throughout the journey of the movie, I don't want to give it away, but we find out dark pasts from certain characters, not just Adam Brody, but reasons behind certain things that I won't mention because it is a spoiler-free review. Forgot to mention that. So there's certain twists and turns that go throughout the film. It's a very quiet movie. There's not a lot of people in it. Even though they're in the wilderness, it feels like that isolated movie as well. But one thing I absolutely love about this film, like I said, it's not the greatest movie of all time, but the characters in this film is what drives the story. Not only the characters, but the acting in the movie is fantastic as well. But the characters really drive this movie home because you've got siblings in this film, brothers and sisters, that they don't see eye to eye, but when push comes to shove, they'll do anything for each other. You've got these girls in the film where, you know, they're girls, but then you've got men in the movie as well, and you can see that the men are trying to do their thing to help them, to protect them, and the movie allows that to happen. It allows us to breathe. We can see that they're just good old-fashioned men in the film that are trying to do good. And you've got the girls who sometimes are helpless, but you've also got the girls in the movie that they're trying their best, but they're also learning from the mistakes. They're learning as they go along. They see things that they can pick up on. And throughout the journey, especially Leighton Meester's character, throughout her journey of the movie, she's this, not timid because she knows what she's doing, but she's really laid back and she's reserved. But there's a reason for that, which I won't tell you about. But near the end of the film, she becomes somebody greater. It almost reminds me of the main character, I can't remember her name now, Sharni Vincent, I think it is, in You're Next from 2011. Her the badass that she became at the end of that film, sort of similar in a survival instinct way that Leighton Meester does in this movie. And that's just one person. Everybody plays their part in this movie. If I have to pinpoint the greatest parts of these films, it has to be the characters, it has to be the actors that are playing the characters. I know this movie isn't strictly horror, it's got a little bit of a horror element to it, it's more of a thriller, but at the end of the day, I felt like I just had to talk about it because I watch movies all the time, obviously a lot of horror films, and not just horror films, but other movies that just, they kind of pander to a specific audience in a really obvious way. Some do it well, some don't. This one panders to nobody. This one just does what it's supposed to do. It's got these characters that you can relate to. It's got characters that you want to survive, characters that you just want to die. It's got everything that you need in a movie that's character driven, straight from the beginning right to the very end. No, this movie is not perfect. This movie is not amazing. It's a good movie, but like I said, what carries this film is the characters. And what I love to see, and not just horror films, any film, is a character driven story, something that keeps you watching, whether the movie's boring, whether the movie doesn't do a lot, you want to see what happens to these characters because you're so invested in them. And that's what The River Wild does. It gets you invested in these characters straight from the beginning, that you just have to see it through to the very end. If you've seen this movie, guys, leave your comments down below. Don't spoil anything for those who haven't seen it, but I actually really enjoyed this film. If I'm looking back on all the movies of 2023 so far, then I think that The River Wild is probably the most surprising of the year so far for me. But leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the back seat! Tell me where you are, John!
Wolfman's got Nards.